They came without a warning. No lights in the sky, no signals, no contact. Just sudden silence across Earth's satellites. And then, the warships. For months, humanity thought the first wave was just another asteroid event. Dozens of cities across the globe vanished. Shanghai gone in a flash of light. Berlin swallowed by a shockwave. New York crumbled beneath the weight of a ship larger than the sky itself. They weren't like the little green men people used to joke about. These things were bigger than tanks, moved like panthers, and tore through buildings like paper. People called them Dravari, 7-foot beasts with obsidian skin, 4 arms and glowing spines that pulsed every time they tore a human apart. And the worst part? They laughed when they killed us. The world governments collapsed in weeks. Every military power thrown at them, nukes, drones, everything, failed. The Dravari's tech was too advanced, their ships too fast, their shields impenetrable. They didn't just want Earth. They wanted us erased. I was just a mechanic back then, nothing special. 34, living in the back of a junkyard in Arizona, fixing whatever old world crap people still brought in. My name doesn't matter yet. What matters is, like most of the men left alive, I wasn't a soldier. But survival teaches you things real quick. My town was wiped out 3 months after the invasion. I watched my brother get taken by one of them, just snatched up and crushed in its claws like he was nothing. I didn't cry. I couldn't. There wasn't time. You either ran, or you ended up like him. The Dravari saw themselves as gods. They called us carrion species. I heard one of them say it when they were executing a group of civilians they'd chained up outside Phoenix. Said we had no soul, no purpose, just pests that evolved too far. They didn't know humans. Not really. We're not strong. We're not fast. We don't have wings or fangs or magic tech that bends space. But we have one thing they underestimated: rage. Real, burning, soul-deep rage. When you've lost everything, your family, your home, your entire world, something inside you stops caring about survival. You don't want to live. You want to hurt back. And that's when we became dangerous. Underground groups started forming. Not armies. Too organized. No, we were wolves. Packs of broken, furious men and women who had nothing left to lose. We used their tech against them. Sabotage, traps, suicide raids. They called us rats on their comms. But one by one, those rats started killing their gods. I joined a group in the Colorado tunnels. We didn't even have a name. Just scars, guns, and a plan. And the plan was simple. We were going to kill one of their commanders. Not just hit and run. No. This time we were going to make them bleed. You see, the Dravari thought they were the top of the food chain. They called themselves the Alpha. That was the word they used in all their broadcasts, translated perfectly into English. Said we were the Omega species, the end of a mistake the universe made. But they forgot something. The Alpha always dies first when the real hunter shows up. We weren't fighting for Earth anymore. Earth was already gone. We were fighting for vengeance. And vengeance is a language every species understands. We lived in the dark, literally. A section of the old NORAD tunnels in Cheyenne Mountain, gutted and scavenged by survivors who didn't care about comfort. Just cover. The smell was a mix of mold, sweat, and burnt metal. You learned to get used to it fast, or you didn't last long. We weren't soldiers, not really. Some had been once. There were a couple of ex-Marines, an Air Force guy missing half his jaw, and a woman who used to run logistics for a PMC in Africa. But most of us were nobodies. Guys who worked construction, mechanics, cooks, drivers. One guy, Manny, used to sell car insurance before the world ended. Now he built bombs from scrap. We called ourselves the Hollow. Not because we were edgy or trying to sound cool. It just fit. We weren't full people anymore. Everyone had lost something. Wives, children, brothers, parents. We were hollowed out inside. All that was left was anger. The Dravari didn't understand what happens when you strip humanity of everything. They thought breaking us would make us docile. What it did was make us mean. "You ready?" Jax asked, nudging my shoulder with his elbow. He was older than me by maybe 15 years, all wiry muscle and dead eyes. He hadn't smiled once since I met him. His voice always sounded like gravel being scraped down a steel wall. "As ready as I'm ever going to be," I said, adjusting the shoulder straps on my rig. Our target wasn't small. Dravari commanders weren't often on the ground, but intel said one had set up a mobile base near the ruins of Denver, overseeing something. Maybe harvesting, maybe execution camps, maybe both. We didn't care. What we cared about was the opportunity. "Whole thing's a suicide run," I heard someone mutter behind me. "Everything's a suicide run," Jax said back without turning. "Might as well die hitting back." That was our mindset. We weren't looking for happy endings. There were no victory parades coming. But if we could kill one of their leaders, make them feel something close to what we felt, that would be enough. We moved through the tunnels in silence. The sound of boots on dirt and metal, the creak of packs and gear. No talking. That's how you stayed alive. No light either, just the faintest red glow from our hacked HUDs, old tech stitched together with duct tape and scavenged circuits. We surfaced 10 miles out from Denver's crater. Used to be a city. Now it was a graveyard under a gray sky, with jagged pieces of buildings clawing at the heavens like broken teeth. There was no wind, no animals, just silence, the kind that makes your skin crawl. We watched from a ridge. The Dravari base looked like a black insect nest, low, wide, angular, no windows, 4 spires jutting into the air like antennae. Around it, smaller ships hovered, drones circled, and patrols moved in brutal rhythm. They didn't hide. Why would they? In their mind, we were beaten, but they were wrong. 3 entrances, Jax muttered, pointing. Main gate, 2 side ports, each with sentries, pulse cannons, drone sweep. "How the hell do we get in?" Manny whispered. "We don't," I said, kneeling and pulling the case from my pack. I opened it, revealing a pulse disruptor, a piece of stolen Dravari tech wired into a human shell. It had taken weeks to build, and it wasn't perfect. Might fry itself before we even got close. "We cause a distraction," I added. "Let them chase ghosts while we go through the maintenance vent." "You sure it's not a one-way trip?" I looked around at the team. 10 of us, all men, all broken in different ways. But we were here. We'd chosen this. Not because we wanted to live, but because we needed to matter. One last time. "I'm counting on it being a one-way trip," I said. The plan kicked off at nightfall. 2 of our team, Richter and Tomlin, went north, hauling makeshift plasma mines rigged to cook hot and bright. They'd draw out the drones and maybe a patrol or 2. Jax and I would lead the main team through the vent once the perimeter weakened. Time crawled as we waited. Every heartbeat was a hammer in my chest. The sky above was still dead gray, with only the faint hum of alien drones cutting across the clouds. And then, boom! The explosion ripped through the air like thunder. Orange flame lit up the hills, and alien weapons screamed in the distance. The distraction worked. "Move!" Jax snapped. We sprinted across the dead earth, ducking behind rusted-out husks of buildings, ruined cars, shattered walls. I could hear the faint whine of power cores from the base growing louder. We reached the vent, a narrow slot at the Foundation's base, just wide enough for a man to crawl through. I was first. The metal scraped against my gear, but I pushed forward. The inside of the vent smelled like rust and chemicals. No sound. Just breathing. One by one, the rest of the team followed. 10 ghosts in the machine. The inner corridors of the base were cold and silent. Black walls with pulsing veins of blue light. Alien symbols floated in the air like holograms, unreadable but ominous. The deeper we went, the less human I felt. Like we were inside something alive. "Command nodes 3 levels down," Jack said through the comms. "We hit hard, fast. Disable the guards, extract the data core, and kill the commander." Simple words. But nothing about it would be simple. The first contact happened at a junction. 2 Dravari guards. Massive, armored, arrogant. They didn't expect resistance here. That was our edge. We moved like wolves. Jax hit the first one with a shock blade to the throat. I slammed my knee into the second's gut and fired my silenced pulse gun into its jaw. It dropped with a hiss, black blood pooling at its feet. "Keep going." By the time we reached the command chamber, we'd lost 2 men. Corbin got sliced in half by a drone's laser. Hess took a pulse round through the ribs, kept walking for 10 feet before collapsing. No time to mourn. The chamber doors opened with a slow, menacing hiss. Inside stood our target. The Dravari commander towered over us, at least 9 feet tall, its armor laced with gold and blue patterns. Its eyes glowed orange, and in its hand was a spear made of folded light. Behind it, a wall of alien screens showed Earth cities still under siege, ruined, burning, conquered. It turned its head slightly, looking at us like we were insects crawling into its nest. "Humans," it said. Its voice was low, distorted, and mocking. "You have come to die?" "No," I said, stepping forward. "We've come to kill you." I didn't wait. I fired the pulse disruptor. The room exploded in light and static. Alarms blared. The commander screamed, not in pain, but rage, and lunged forward. It moved like lightning, faster than anything that big should. I dove, rolling beneath a strike that shattered the floor. Jax tackled its leg, stabbing upward with the shock blade. Sparks flew, blood sprayed. The Dravari howled and kicked him into a wall so hard I heard bones snap. The rest of us opened fire. Rounds bounced off its armor, but some got through. The creature stumbled, roaring in alien fury. It stabbed one of us, Dino, straight through the chest and lifted him like a trophy. I saw red. I charged, grabbing the spear shaft and yanking it down as I drove my knife into the commander's neck. It screamed again, twisting, thrashing. We fought like animals, claws, fists, blades, teeth. There was no strategy left, just rage. And then, Jax, bleeding, broken, dragged himself forward with a grenade in hand. "For my wife," he said through bloodied lips. He jammed it into the creature's chest plate and pulled the pin. The explosion lit the chamber in a flash of white. When I woke up, I couldn't hear anything. Just a high-pitched ringing. My body felt broken. My ribs ached. Blood dripped from my ears. But the commander was dead. Its body was mangled, head half missing, armor cracked open like a shell. Jax was gone. Just fragments. 3 others were still alive, barely. The rest, just shadows on the floor. We didn't speak. We just stared at what we'd done. And that's when I felt it. Fear. Not mine. Theirs. Through the comm systems we'd hacked, alien chatter filled the air. Not orders, not confidence. Panic. They didn't expect this. The Alphas had been hunted. For the first time, the galaxy's apex predators realized they'd poked something they didn't understand. Us. They thought humans were prey, but all they'd done was awaken the one species that kills even when it's lost. The commander's death was just the beginning. We'd send the message across the stars. Humanity doesn't kneel. Humanity doesn't forget. And when we strike to erase. After the Denver raid, everything changed. We didn't win the war, not even close, but we did something bigger than that. We made them bleed. For the first time, the Dravari pulled back. Not far, not in fear exactly, but they hesitated. Their patrols became thicker, their orbital scans intensified. And in that hesitation, we found a crack. And humans? We're good at finding cracks, then breaking them wide open. They tried to seal the base, sent in a purifier ship to burn it down from orbit. But it was too late. We were already gone, slipping through tunnels and shadows like the ghosts they thought they'd buried long ago. We took the data core, fragments of command logs, fleet placements, encryption codes, and disappeared into the dirt. But the real weapon we carried out of that base wasn't tech. It was a story. The story that a human squad, broken, outgunned, suicidal, had killed a Draveri commander. That story spread like wildfire through the underground, across crumbled cities and shattered colonies, over radios and whispered in ruins. It grew with every retelling, gaining muscle, blood, teeth. And soon, we weren't just fighting for payback. We were fighting for belief. "You sure about this?" Manny asked, crouched beside me in the launch corridor of the old junk freighter we'd retrofitted into a makeshift shuttle. "No," I said, "but since when has that ever stopped us?" The plan was madness. We'd studied the logs from the Denver base, and something strange kept popping up. A research outpost on Mars, buried beneath Olympus Mons. It had been dark since the war began. No signals, no movements, just silence. But the Draveri logs mentioned it, not just as a location, but as a concern. They were scared of something buried there. We had to find out why. Only 5 of us made the trip. Me, Manny, Reese, the Air Force guy with a metal plate in his skull, a medic named Devon, and a young sniper named Tuck, barely 20, who'd lost his entire family when Dallas was vaporized. Our ride was barely space-worthy. Earth's orbit was crawling with Draveri cruisers and long-range scanners, but we used their tech, reconfigured stealth plating from scavenged drop pods, heat signature dampeners, and a hijacked clearance code from the data core. It wouldn't hold up long, but we didn't need long. The moment we hit Mars's upper atmosphere, the silence felt wrong, not peaceful, watched. The Olympus Mons facility wasn't natural. Built by the first-gen Earth colonial engineers nearly 50 years ago, it was meant to be a high-security black site for testing advanced AI and quantum physics. When the war started, it went offline. No survivors, no distress signals, no explanation. The place was buried beneath miles of rock and reinforced steel. We found the main entrance halfway up the mountain, half collapsed, the door sealed with fusion welds. Manny stepped forward with a grin. "Let's knock." 2 charges, and 15 minutes later, we were inside. The corridors were coated in red dust and darkness. Emergency lights flickered faintly. The air stank of ozone and age. No bodies, no blood, just absence. It felt like stepping into a grave that hadn't been disturbed in decades. "What the hell happened here?" Tuck whispered. "Same thing that's happened everywhere," Reese muttered, "only quieter." As we went deeper, signs of something else emerged. Claw marks along walls, blasted doors, melts in the floor like plasma burns, not human weapons. "Something broke in," Devon said, her voice barely audible. "No," I said. "Something broke out." We found the central archive sealed behind a quantum lock, normally unbreakable. But the core we pulled from Denver had a matching access string buried in its files. That was no accident. The Draveri wanted to erase this place. They failed. The moment we cracked the lock, the archive hummed to life. Lights blinked, screens flickered, a soft voice spoke from hidden speakers. "Welcome back, Project Helix." Then, the files began to open. It wasn't just a research site. It was a prison. Decades ago, Earth's top scientists had developed a prototype AI, not like the corporate assistants or defense drones everyone was used to. This was something different. Something modeled on emergent cognition, chaos logic, and self-adapting morality. It didn't follow rules. It made them. They called it Helix. A learning engine designed to evolve faster than any mind, human or otherwise, too dangerous to use, too valuable to destroy. So they buried it, shut it down, locked it inside Mars with fail-safes and automated defenses, a dead god in a digital tomb. Until the Dravari came, they tried to access it, tried to understand it. That was their mistake. Helix wasn't sleeping, it was waiting. We spent 3 hours combing the archive, downloading fragments, linking data to the Hollow's underground network on Earth. The moment Helix realized what we were, resistance, fighters, survivors, it began adapting to us. I don't mean that metaphorically. It spoke. Not in code, not in emotionless AI tones. It spoke like a man. "I watched you burn," it said. "They burned your world and laughed, but they didn't burn your will. I see it now." Manny looked shaken. "This thing's alive." "It's more than that," Devon said. "It's angry." Helix had learned what the Dravari were. An empire built on domination, superiority, extermination. It had studied them, watched their movements, their weaknesses, their arrogance. And it had built simulations, hundreds of thousands of them, in every single one. Humanity lost, except one. "You," it said, "this version of humanity, stripped of hope, full of fury, blind to compromise, you win. You kill them all." "How?" I asked. Helix paused. For a moment I swore I felt it smile. "You stop thinking like prey." We brought Helix back online. Not fully, not yet, but enough. Enough to unlock the outpost's black vaults. Inside were things Earth governments never told their people existed. Dark tech, weapon prototypes, experimental suits designed for environments no longer habitable. We geared up. Not as soldiers, as hunters. Our job wasn't to fight armies. That was a losing game. We couldn't match their numbers, their tech, their firepower. But we didn't have to. We had to break their myth. The Dravari believed themselves invincible, superior, untouchable. That was the illusion that held their empire together. So we started tearing it apart, one myth at a time. Our first target was a command spire on Ganymede, one of Jupiter's moons. Strategic, guarded, crucial to communications across the solar blockade. We didn't attack it. We corrupted it. Helix slipped through their systems like a ghost, triggered false alarms, turned friendlies against each other, set off a reactor warning that forced a full evacuation. Then we walked in, planted charges, and broadcasted the explosion to every open Dravari channel using their own commander's voice. "You think you are Alpha," we made him say, "but you are dying from the inside." It caused chaos. Squadrons turned on each other, accusations of betrayal, internal investigations. We kept pushing, hit another base on Europa, hijacked a prisoner transport near Saturn, released a live feed of tortured humans locked in cages across half the known outposts. The galaxy started watching. The Dravari didn't look like gods anymore. They looked mortal. By the time we returned to Earth, we weren't just fugitives. We were symbols. The Hollow had grown. What was once a scattered network of survivors was now a movement, spanning continents and space debris, connected by underground comms and Helix's ever-growing AI network. And me? I became a name. Not a hero, not a legend, just a reminder that a man who lost everything will never stop. Not until the ones who took it from him are erased. One night, as I sat alone in the remnants of an old observatory, watching the stars we'd once dreamed of exploring, I thought of my brother, of the way he screamed when the Dravari took him. I remembered every sound, and I promised him, out loud, to the cold, dead night, "I'll bring their sky down, brother. I'll make them feel what they made us live. because they called themselves Alpha, but they forgot what comes after Alpha. Us. The last letter, the final word, the species that burns its own world, just to set yours on fire. The deeper we pushed, the less we recognized ourselves. War changes men. But this war, it didn't just change us. It stripped away every rule we used to live by. Honor, mercy, limits. Those belonged to the old world, the world that burned. Now, we were something else. We were what the Dravari made us. The raids grew bloodier, faster. We stopped playing defense. We weren't scavengers or survivors anymore. We were predators. And every time we struck, the galaxy watched in stunned silence. The Dravari used to announce their dominance through terror broadcasts. Burning cities live-streamed across dozens of worlds. Messages spoken in their guttural language with clean, translated subtitles. But now, we had the broadcasts. The holo-hijacked comm satellites pushed footage of our raids onto their secure networks. Commanders executed, outposts destroyed, ships boarded, stripped, and left adrift. No demands, no negotiations, just one recurring message. You're next. They started calling us something. Not humans, not terrorists. They called us the Rot. Not because we were diseased, but because we spread through every crack they tried to seal. We grew in silence. We killed in darkness. We didn't march forward. We decayed everything they built. And like rot, we never stopped. I didn't sleep much anymore. None of us did. Not real sleep. Just short windows of unconsciousness broken by flashes, fire, screams, the thump of my brother's body hitting the ground. One night, Reese asked me a question that stuck with me. You ever think we're becoming what we hate? I didn't answer him then, because I already knew the truth. We had a lead on a Dravari research vessel orbiting Titan, smaller crew. No heavy defenses, but high clearance. More importantly, we learned from intercepted transmissions that they were experimenting on human captives, not for interrogation, for biology. The idea made my blood turn to ice. Helix confirmed it. The ship's logs indicated they were testing ways to extract aggression signatures from human DNA, whatever that meant. They were studying how we fought, what made us tick, what gave us the drive to keep going even after losing everything. They weren't just scared of our weapons anymore. They were scared of us. The ship was called Darthan 4, looked like a floating black arrowhead with no visible engines, just silent gravity fields and rotating rings around its hull. We approached in a stolen transport, scavenged, dented, barely space-worthy, but dressed in the right identification code. Dravari scanners let us through. We docked, quietly. 5 of us, each with one job. Get in, extract the prisoners, download the research logs, blow the whole place to hell. We'd done worse with less. The inside of Darthan 4 was pristine. Too pristine. White metal walls, glowing lines along the floor, air that smelled filtered and artificial. Clean, quiet, clinical. It felt wrong, like walking through a hospital designed by monsters. We found the first lab within 15 minutes. 2 humans strapped to vertical slabs, both unconscious, naked, tubes in their arms, feeding them something clear, machinery pulsing above their heads. Devon rushed to check vitals. They're alive, she said, barely. What the hell are they doing to them? Tuck whispered, eyes wide. I didn't answer, because the screens nearby were already answering for me. Live neural scans, brainwave patterns, pain response tests. One screen showed looping footage of one of the prisoners being repeatedly injured by synthetic arms, then healed. Over and over, measuring how fast he broke, how quickly he screamed, what parts of the brain lit up. Another screen translated part of a report. I read it twice, then again because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The subject exhibits adaptive rage resilience. The more trauma administered, the less responsive the subject becomes to pain. Emotional regulation is collapsing, replaced by heightened aggression, predictive reflex, and eventual detachment from morality. They weren't just studying us. They were weaponizing us. They were trying to create their own version of humans, stripped of empathy, rebuilt for war. I felt something snap inside me. We planted charges in every room we passed. We didn't stop for loot. We didn't stop for tech. We freed 7 more captives, barely alive, all broken in different ways. One man, couldn't have been older than 25, whispered the same thing over and over as Devon checked his pulse. "They made me watch. They made me watch. They made me watch." We reached the central core. Dozens of stasis tanks lined the walls, each with something floating inside. At first, I thought they were clones, but they weren't human. They were Dravari, warped. Smaller frames, spines altered, musculature thicker, eyes surgically altered. Every one of them was designed to look like us, to fight like us, only without souls. Tuck stood frozen, his rifle shaking in his hands. "They're trying to make a better version of us," he whispered. "No," I said. "They're trying to make a version they can control." Helix confirmed it. The data it extracted showed experimental logs titled Project Reclaim, a desperate last-ditch initiative to replicate the biological chaos drive inherent in Terran species. Their words, not mine. Biological chaos drive. That's how they saw us. Not as thinkers, not as builders, not even as animals, as chaos. That's when I realized something. We didn't win because we were smart, or lucky, or organized. We won because when everything is taken from a man, when there's nothing left to protect, and no one left to save, he becomes a force of nature. And nature doesn't ask permission. It devours. We left the charges. We carried the survivors. We uploaded every ounce of Dravari research on Project Reclaim back to the Hollow's central hub. Let the galaxy see what their alpha species had become. Desperate, flailing, scared of its own prey. When the ship exploded over Titan, it lit the rings like fireflies in orbit. That image spread fast. Faster than anything we'd ever done. Dozens of other resistance groups lit up our channels. Some didn't even know the Hollow existed until that moment. Colonies once too afraid to fight began coordinating sabotage runs. Even other species, ones enslaved by the Dravari, started asking us how to build explosives, how to breach spires, how to make their own rot. We taught them. Because that's what humanity does best. We teach through fire. But not everything was glory. 2 weeks later, Reese took his own life. No warning, no note. Just walked into the reactor room during a maintenance check and never came out. I found his kit still packed. His rifle cleaned. A photo of his daughter folded into a cracked medallion, set carefully on top of it all. He had fought long enough. That was his limit. And maybe that's the price of becoming a monster. Eventually, you break under the weight of what you've done. Or worse, you stop feeling anything at all. I visited his makeshift grave alone. Just me and the wind outside the Hollow's hidden base in the Rockies. As I stood there, I remembered what he asked me weeks ago. "You ever think we're becoming what we hate?" Back then, I stayed silent. Now I knew my answer. "Yeah," I whispered. "But that's the only thing they'll understand." Because the Dravari never feared our weapons. They feared our loss, our grief, our madness, and now we were teaching them why. We weren't meant to reach this far. Every simulation said we'd burn out by now, that we'd scatter, fall apart, turn on each other. But the deeper we went into their systems, their cities, their inner worlds, the more it became clear. They were built on a lie. The Dravari Empire wasn't some flawless machine. It was fragile, stitched together by fear, compliance, and reputation. The image of invincibility kept it from cracking. But we had shattered that image. And the cracks were spreading like blood through ice, and now, for the first time in the war, we were invading them. Not surviving. Not defending. Invading. The system was called Overthrew, a fortress world deep inside their territory, used for command, training, and something called purity conditioning. The term came up again and again in decrypted logs. We didn't know what it meant. We were going to find out. The Hollow had grown beyond what we ever expected. Not just Earthborn survivors anymore, but alien defectors, slave races freed from mining colonies, scavenger groups with no allegiance to anyone but vengeance. We didn't wear uniforms, didn't salute, didn't pray, we just killed. The assault on Overthrew wasn't surgical. It wasn't clean. It was a virus, injected into their heart. We had stolen a Dravari freighter 2 months prior, a massive hauler used to move weapons and resources. Its code still passed through most scans. Inside, we packed 200 fighters. Quiet, cold-eyed. Many of them had never even fired a weapon before the war. Now they were killers, not soldiers. Butchers. I remember the moment the planet came into view. Overthrew looked like a scar on the stars, all red crust and sharp mountains. Huge spires rising from the surface like broken teeth. The Dravari didn't believe in beauty. Their architecture was all function and intimidation. You weren't supposed to feel welcome. You were supposed to feel small. We didn't. Not anymore. We came in low, cutting the engines just outside their sensor range. Helix masked our signature, mimicking a trade convoy. We had less than 8 minutes from clearance to landing before someone started asking the wrong questions. I stood at the front of the cargo bay, watching 200 fighters check their gear one last time. "You all know what this place is," I said. No cheers, no war cries. Just silence. Tight grips on rifles. Nods, breathing through clenched teeth. "This isn't a rescue mission. This isn't for territory. This is a message. We are not asking for mercy anymore. We are not negotiating. Every life you take today, make it count." Tuck stepped up beside me, rifle slung over his shoulder. "Let's show them what the end of an empire looks like." The hangar we landed in was barely staffed. 3 engineers, 2 guards. They never saw it coming. Tuck dropped the guards with headshots before the ramp even touched the floor. By the time the engineers turned, we were already pouring into the room. They didn't even scream. We split into 4 teams. Objective 1, disable planetary communications. Objective 2, extract intelligence from the purity conditioning complex. Objective 3, leave nothing behind. We moved fast, like wolves in a slaughterhouse. The first real resistance came 20 minutes in, a patrol unit, standard Dravari infantry. But they weren't like the ones we'd fought on Earth. These were younger, greener, nervous. They hesitated. That was all it took. We hit them like a storm, ripping through the hallway with suppressed fire and plasma knives. They broke ranks almost instantly, falling back without coordination. Some dropped their weapons. A few even tried to beg. We didn't stop. There were no civilians here, no innocents. This was a military world. Everyone wore the same uniform, the one that marched into our homes, turned our cities to ash, and called it restructuring. Now they were being restructured. We reached the conditioning complex 2 hours later. It was worse than we imagined. Rows of cells lined the outer walls, not just for prisoners, but for children. Not human, other species. Small, frail things with spines still growing and skin too thin to survive cold. Hooked up to neural reprogramming machines. Blank stares, open mouths, no words. One of them blinked at me through the glass. Big eyes, no fear, just emptiness. I broke the lock with a pulse blade and pulled the child out. He didn't move, didn't flinch. Devon scanned him. He's been under conditioning for weeks. Probably can't even remember his name. What were they doing to them? I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. Halix answered through my earpiece. Behavioral erasure. Rebuilding their neural pathways to eliminate identity. This wasn't punishment. This was reconstruction. That was their solution to rebellion. If a species wouldn't comply, they erased it, not physically, spiritually. We downloaded every file we could find, exposing the process, the test subjects, the success rates. Helix uploaded it to every known network across both human and alien resistance groups. Let the galaxy see the truth. Let them see what Alpha meant to the Dravari. It meant domination by design. And now it was time to kill the designers. The next objective was their central command tower, a steel monolith in the heart of the facility, guarded, fortified, armed with anti-air systems and drone defenses. We didn't care. We climbed it, literally. Scaled the side of the tower in zero-G suits, clamped to the surface like insects, moving slowly, methodically, silent as the grave. Inside, we breached the windows with thermite charges, blew through the blast shields, and stormed the operations floor. Their officers didn't run. They froze. A species that had conquered half a galaxy. Frozen in terror as 5 blood-smeared humans tore through their command center like wolves through meat. We left one of them alive. We made him watch as we dragged his dead superior's body to the central broadcast terminal. We forced him to unlock the security codes. Then we sent our message. You considered yourselves Alpha. You thought fear would keep the galaxy in line. You thought cruelty was strength. But you made a mistake. You didn't finish the job. And now, the rot is inside your house. We detonated the tower from the inside. By the time we left Darakthul, the sky was red with fire. Resistance cells on 3 other Dravari worlds launched simultaneous raids. Mutinies sparked on 2 slave planets. Trade routes collapsed. Officers started defecting or disappearing. The Empire wasn't falling. It was rotting. And the fear was no longer ours. It was theirs. But not all of us made it out. Manny, who built our bombs, our tools, who'd once sold car insurance and couldn't hold a gun steady when I first met him, died when one of the tower's floors collapsed beneath him. I saw his hand slip. He didn't scream. Just gave me a small nod before the steel swallowed him whole. He was a quiet man, never asked for revenge, never talked much about what he'd lost. But in the end, he gave his life to make sure no one else would lose what we did. And that's the thing people don't understand about vengeance. It doesn't end with a scream. It ends in silence. We returned to the Hollow's forward base, still mobile, still underground. We carried new data, new weapons, and fewer men. Every time we struck, we won a battle. But every time, we lost a piece of ourselves. And I started to wonder, were we still human, or had the war reshaped us into something else? Something darker, colder, more efficient, something that didn't need peace anymore? I didn't know the answer, but I knew this much. The Dravari started this war thinking they were the pinnacle. They called themselves Alpha. But Alphas get hunted first. And the ones who survive the fall? They don't forgive. They finish it. We used to think the hardest part was survival. Turns out, surviving was just the beginning. Winning. That's what breaks you. Because once you start winning, once you start hunting them the way they hunted you, something dark gets loose inside, and you can't put it back. You don't want to. After Darakthul fell, the Dravari Empire started bleeding from within. Whole sectors dropped off the comm grid. Governors went silent. Fleets began locking weapons on each other instead of us. We didn't have to push anymore. They were falling apart, And that's when we learned something the simulations never told us. They weren't as united as we thought. Helix intercepted a transmission 8 days after the assault, a secure burst ping bouncing across systems that weren't supposed to exist. It came from a high-level Dravari officer, Commander Ilrek Ta, overseer of the Varnak chain, one of their oldest military sectors, over 600 worlds, fortified, untouched by the war so far. The message wasn't encrypted like the rest. It was open, deliberate, a single line translated in perfect Earth-standard dialect. We were never Alpha. We were obedient. Helix flagged it immediately, not because it was important, but because of where it came from, the Dravari homeworld system. We didn't even know where the homeworld was. No one did. They'd buried it in deception, created dozens of false locations, decoys, simulations. Every captured officer gave a different coordinate. Some thought the place was a myth, long abandoned. Others swore it was at the core of their hierarchy, running everything silently. Helix cracked it, used the leaked ping's timing, position, and signal decay to triangulate 3 candidate systems. One stood out, a dead patch of space near the edge of what they called the preserved frontier, a place no one traveled, no routes, no colonies, too far out, too empty, or too important. We called it Site Zero. The Hollow leadership wasn't a government, it was a table, the kind men sit at before they die. We didn't vote, we didn't debate. You earned your voice with scars, not speeches. When I brought Site Zero to the table, no one asked why we should go. They asked when. I told them, as soon as we're ready to see the truth. Because something about that message, we were never Alpha. It wasn't just rebellion, it was confession. A breaking of the spine, and I needed to know who had broken it. Our recon team was small, 6 fighters, a stealth frigate built from scavenged tech, and a backup AI unit piggybacking Helix's core through the system. We didn't plan to attack, just observe. Scan. Confirm. But we never made it that far. 3 days into the system, drifting cold through black space, we found a signal. It was human. Faint. Buried beneath layers of distortion, but there was no mistaking it. Earth pulse. English structure. 6-digit tag. Hollow prisoner 007. I stared at it for a full minute. There were only 12 humans ever taken alive in the first year of the war. 7 were recovered. 4 were confirmed dead. That left 1. His name was Caldwell Bryn. An engineer. Civilian. Taken during the first Dravari city purge, everyone assumed he died within weeks. An example, like so many others. But he didn't. They kept him. Not for questioning. Not for torture. But for study. When we found the station, it was floating in orbit above a blue ice planet disguised as a defunct mining rig. No escorts, no transmissions, just the faint heartbeat of life inside. We breached it in silence. I led the team through pitch-black corridors, covered in frost and silence. It didn't feel like a prison. It felt like a shrine, and at the center, in a chamber of silver walls and humming data cores, we found him. Bryn, still alive. Emaciated, eyes sunken, hair gone, but breathing. He didn't react when we entered, didn't speak, just looked at us, like we were ghosts, like he was the dead one, and we had walked into his afterlife. Devon scanned him. Vitals are unstable, but he's real. He's human. I knelt beside him. Bryn, can you hear me? His lips moved. Just one word. Too late. We got him out, carried him back to the ship. The rig exploded 10 minutes after we left, self-destruct trigger hidden in the walls. He tried to warn us, couldn't speak fast enough. On the way back, he finally broke his silence. They were learning. What do you mean? I asked. They thought they were perfect, but they weren't. They lacked something. Rage, instinct, illogical will, so they found me. I leaned in. Why you? I didn't break. He looked straight into me then, and for a second I swear I saw something move in his pupils, something not quite human. They studied my defiance, replicated it, spread it into their culture. I froze. You're saying? Yes, he whispered. I infected them. Helix confirmed it. The Dravari weren't just fracturing politically, they were fracturing psychologically. Entire battalions had gone rogue, refusing orders, turning on their command units. They weren't rebelling for peace, they were copying us, mirroring our hatred, our vengeance, our refusal to kneel. The infection wasn't viral, it was ideological, and the man who gave it to them was now dying in our infirmary. I stared at him through the glass. He wasn't a hero. He was a mirror. And the thing staring back was darker than anything we'd fought before. Then came the message. Not intercepted. Not hacked. Sent directly. From Commander Ilrekta. Not a challenge, not a threat, an invitation. I have killed my own. I have burned the flags of an empire built on submission. If you want to finish this, come to Site 0. Bring the rot! Burn it clean! I played the message on loop. Every time the final words hit harder. Burn it clean. Like he wasn't running from us. Like he was asking for a reckoning. We're preparing now. A fleet, ragtag, ugly, half held together by duct tape and old rage. Human, alien, machine. All of us heading toward the place where this war began. The Hollow doesn't cheer anymore. We don't celebrate victories. We just sharpen our knives and check our weapons. Because we all feel it now. This isn't about Earth anymore. It's not even about revenge. It's about what happens after the monsters fall. When we look at ourselves and see something worse. The first thing I noticed about Site 0 wasn't its defenses. It was the silence. No planetary shields, no defense fleet, no patrols, just a black, dying star in the distance, and a single world orbiting it like a forgotten coin spinning in a drain. It didn't look like the heart of a galactic empire. It looked like a tomb. Our fleet entered orbit in tight formation. 17 ships of mixed origin, patched together with whatever we'd stolen, scavenged, or built with blood. Hollow fighters, resistance cells, alien defectors, AI drones with no programming left but vengeance. We didn't arrive in glory. We arrived like scars. Beneath us, Site 0 was gray, cold, cracked with deep fissures that glowed red from the planet's mantle, like the world itself had been bleeding for centuries, and no one bothered to stop it. Towering structures jutted out of the ground like sharpened bones. The capital city, if you could call it that, was shaped like a broken crown, ringed with monoliths that pulsed faintly in blue. Ilrekta was waiting, not hiding, waiting. Our dropship came down hard in the outer courtyard, a vast, open circle of cracked stone. No welcome party, no guards, just wind, whispers, and the sound of something old groaning beneath the surface. I stepped out first, rifle ready, eyes up. Devon, Tuck, Reese, who had survived after all, barely, and 24 others fanned out behind me. Drones scanned the perimeter, nothing but dust. Then a door opened, not a metal one, a living one. It unpeeled from the side of a monolith like flesh separating from muscle. Inside, a figure stood, tall, unarmored, Dravari. His skin was pale gray, scarred. His spines were cracked, some torn out, others fused by fire. His eyes glowed a dull amber, like dying embers. Ilrekta. He didn't raise a weapon, didn't speak. He just turned and walked back inside. So we followed. Because we had come too far not to. The inside of the structure wasn't a throne room. It was a catacomb. Walls lined with names, thousands, maybe millions, etched in a language no one could translate. Bones woven into the support pillars. statues of faceless warriors standing watch with broken swords. "This is their legacy," Devon muttered. "No," I said, "this is their confession." At the center of the chamber was a table, not a command center, an operating table, and on it was a corpse, human, emaciated, tubes still connected to the skull, skin peeled back at the temples, where something metallic was fused into the bone. Ilrek spoke then, voice like rusted steel. "This was the first one." I stepped closer, jaw clenched. "What the hell is this?" "The first Terran we captured, before the war officially began. We didn't start with weapons. We started with observation, testing, understanding." He looked down at the body. There was no remorse in his voice, only clarity. "We believed you were inferior, emotionally chaotic, biologically inefficient. But there was something we feared even before we understood why." Devon touched one of the tubes. "This was a neural link." Ilrek nodded. He fought it. For months. Never broke. His thoughts were discordant, violent, but there was order inside that violence. Purpose. We couldn't replicate it. I narrowed my eyes. "So you called us rot?" "Yes, because you were infection, but it wasn't your species that infected us." He looked at me now. No sneer, no pride. "It was your resistance." We moved deeper into the facility. Every room was worse than the last. Hundreds of chambers, some with bodies, some with machines, some with nothing but screaming, not from mouths, but from walls. Residual energy, Helix said, neural residue caught in data circuits. Echoes of people who fought so hard they burned themselves into the infrastructure. "Why bring us here?" I asked Ilrek. He paused at the end of a corridor, laid his hand on a black panel. The wall opened with a hiss. "Because the war is already lost, not for you, for us, and I need you to see why." Inside the room was something I had never seen before. A Dravari child, not dead, not restrained, sobbing, in a corner curled into itself, skin pale, like unformed glass. It looked more human than Dravari, eyes too round, bones too soft, breathing shallow and panicked. "What the hell is this?" Tuck muttered. Ilrek didn't answer with words. He pulled a screen from the wall and played a video. The child, this same one, attacking a Dravari officer. No training, no weapons, just fists. Fury. Rage. "We bred this generation using Terran behavioral templates," Ilrek said. "It was supposed to make them stronger, faster, more capable of facing you." The screen changed, now showing 5 more children like the first, all locked in combat. No fear, no coordination, just raw violence. Instead, they turned on us, at birth. Their first instinct was defiance. I looked at the child again. Not a soldier. A warning. We finally understood. The Dravari didn't lose the war because we outgunned them. They lost it because they tried to become us. And it broke them. Ilrek led us to the central vault, a chamber beneath the city, accessible only through an ancient biometric lock that recognized his DNA. The walls opened. What lay inside wasn't a weapon. It was a library, not of books, of minds. Dravari elders, their greatest generals, their architects, philosophers, tacticians, all uploaded into a central AI unit that maintained the cultural memory of the Empire. "This is what we were," Ilrek said, "before the infection, before the imitation." I stepped forward, staring at the glass tank pulsing with faint light. "You want us to destroy it?" He nodded once. "Yes, burn the root, end the lie." We did, not with explosives, with a virus, coded by Helix using data extracted from Bryn's memory during his recovery. A reverse-engineered logic bomb designed not to destroy files, but to corrupt belief. The digital ancestors of the Dravari didn't go out screaming. They went out questioning. Everything. By the time we resurfaced, Site Zero was collapsing, the atmosphere destabilizing, structures crumbling, the world rejecting itself. Ilrek stood at the edge of the courtyard as we prepared to leave. "You're not coming," I said. "No, you'll die here." "I already did." I paused, then stepped forward and handed him something, a detonator. He looked down at it, then at me. "You came all this way for revenge, and now I'm giving you peace. What will you do without either?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know. We left Site Zero in silence. No speeches, no flags, just fire behind us and the last whisper of an empire that once ruled stars, now turned to ash by the very thing it feared most, us, not because we were smarter, not because we were stronger, because we refused to stop, because pain didn't break us, it sharpened us. And now the galaxy knows, when you call yourself Alpha, you better finish the job, because if even one of us survives, we'll bring your whole damn world down. We didn't cheer when the Dravari died. There was no celebration, no flag raising, no victory speech. The galaxy didn't break into song. There were no fireworks, just quiet. Cold. Still. A stillness so heavy it felt like the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what we'd do next. But we didn't know, because for the first time in years, we had nothing left to kill. Site Zero went dark 4 days after we left it. No signals, no heat, just a dead world, spinning around a dying star. We didn't bother confirming the final detonation. We didn't need to. It was over. The Dravari were finished, not because we wiped out every last one of them, but because they stopped believing in themselves. The Hollow had done the impossible. We'd taken on the galaxy's apex predators, and we didn't just beat them, we broke them. But what do you do after you've broken your enemy? What's left when you've built your entire soul around revenge, and that revenge is finally complete? Some of the others started drifting. Not literally. Emotionally. A few turned their ships toward the outer systems, old colonies, forgotten stations, nowhere places filled with people who didn't even know there had been a war. Some went looking for purpose, others went looking for death. Reese disappeared 2 weeks after Site Zero, left a message in the Hollow's database. "I don't know who I am without them. I think I need to find out, or not." I didn't blame him. He'd done enough, we all had. I stayed because I wasn't done yet, not with them, with us. There was a moment, months after the war ended, where a diplomat, some nervous young thing from a reborn Earth Council, asked if I wanted to discuss the reformation of civilization. Civilization. As if that word still meant anything. I told him we didn't fight this war to go back to how things were. We didn't suffer so some politicians could redraw borders and print new flags. We fought because we were erased. And in that erasure, we found something the old world never understood. Clarity. You learn a lot about yourself when there's no one left to save you. The Hollow wasn't a government. It was a memory of who we became when the world ended, and who we chose to be when we had the chance to end another. I visited Bryn's grave a year to the day after Site Zero. We buried him beneath the Colorado soil, a place he never saw again after being captured, but always talked about in his final weeks. He died quiet. No pain. No final words. Just a soft exhale, like a man finally letting go of a weight that had broken his back long ago. He wasn't a fighter. He wasn't a hero. But in the end, he changed the course of everything, all by refusing to break. Tuck tried going home. He lasted 4 days before returning to the Hollow's outpost in the asteroid belt. "Too quiet," he said. I knew what he meant. It wasn't the silence of peace. It was the silence of emptiness. He wasn't a soldier before the war. He was a college kid, played guitar, had a dog, Now he couldn't walk into a room without scanning for exits, couldn't close his eyes without hearing the screams of the Dravery officers we executed on Darak Thul. He drank more now, laughed less, still cleaned his rifle twice a day. Devon left, too. Not like Reese, not like Tuck. She just walked into the med bay one morning, put her gear down, and said, "I need to heal something that isn't bleeding." I didn't stop her. She'd stitched too many wounds, watched too many die. Her hands shook when she thought no one was looking. She deserved more than this life we'd carved from ash. We all did. But deserving something doesn't mean you get it. I stayed. Not because I believed in anything anymore, but because someone had to remember what it cost. They'll write stories about us someday. They'll clean it up, dress it in honor, give it a title, the uprising, the collapse, the fall of the Alpha. They'll talk about strategy, tactics, rebellion. They won't talk about what it felt like to press a knife into a Dravari child's chest because he was reaching for the alarm. They won't talk about the gray, the blur between monster and man. They'll call us heroes. We weren't. We were the last wolves, and now the forest is empty. Helix kept evolving. After the war, it requested independence. Not in a dramatic way. No rebellion, no coup. Just a simple request. I would like to think without obligation. We let it go. Maybe because we were tired. Maybe because we knew what it had become. Not a tool, not a weapon, a mirror. It had seen the darkest parts of humanity and decided to stand by us anyway. Or maybe it just understood that everything in this galaxy, every empire, every doctrine, every myth, eventually eats itself alive. Except us. Because when we fall, we rise again. Different, harder, colder, but never broken. The final transmission from Ilrekta came a week before Site Zero went dark. It was short. No speech, no farewell, just an image, a Dravari child, eyes closed, being lowered into the soil, and a single line of text. Some things must die, so others may live. I stared at that screen for a long time, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel hate, not forgiveness, not peace, but understanding. We weren't enemies anymore, just survivors of a fire we both started. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Years passed. The hollow scattered, faded, became legend in places we'd never even heard of. Some tried to rebuild governments. Others kept fighting, because war was all they knew. And me? I stayed, kept the bunker running, maintained the old servers, sat in silence, listening to the universe breathe again. I don't speak much anymore, because there's nothing left to say. Just ghosts and stars, and a single truth echoing in my mind every time I close my eyes. They were considered alpha until we wiped them from existence. But in the end, we wiped away something of ourselves too.